Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Podcana episode 63. This week, we're going to be talking about the final week of store championships in the lead up to Disney Lorcana Challenge Bologna, in which Kawa and Moyen will both be competing. You guys had a chance to play some store championships over the past weekend, able to snag some promos. Why don't you break it down for how that went for us, or how that went for you guys? And Moyen, I saw you post some lists. You're playing some different decks. Kawa, I'm assuming you're playing Emerald Steel over there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, you got a deserving reward for your cardinal sin of playing Emerald Steel.
Yeah, I did. So I played one store champs this past weekend on the final day. I came second. I actually lost to Ruby Amethyst in the final, which I thought was it was like my opponent just had the absolute nuts. Every time I thought they got rid of a B prep, they had another B prep, which was insane. But again, like it's cool to see that, you know, the Ruby Amethyst players they've learned the matchup into Emerald Steel, and it's you can definitely beat it. But yeah, so the reason why Brennan's kind of memeing about my promo is here we go, look at this guy.
This fucking
wearing
audio
this
listeners, Moyen just went off camera, came back on camera with a cornucopia of prizes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was able to collect 5 out of 5 Ursalas and 2 champion mats. I got third place 3 times in total and first place 2 times. So last weekend I stopped playing Ruby Sapphire every event and gave Ruby Amethyst and Sapphire Steel a chance, and they've performed pretty well. I still don't think Ruby Amethyst is close to being fine against Emerald Steel. I absolutely despise that matchup, and even if you do everything correctly, I think that matchup's bad, especially now that people are playing more and more of Prince John.
Yeah, Prince John. That makes it pretty tough.
But Sapphire Steel and Ruby Sapphire are both, I think, very well positioned in the meta. And of course, so is Emerald Steel, so is Amber Steel. Amber Steel has gone under the radar for a long time. And also Amber Emerald, I think, is a very, very good deck if Bucky is banned.
Yeah. You thinking we're going to see a Judy Hops make it into any of those Sapphire decks?
Oh no, don't ask me about the Judy again.
You said Amber Steel, so I mean, you add one Judy Hops. It's like
with more. So if Sapphire Steel and Amber Steel both increase in popularity, I'm not totally opposed to seeing a Judy Hops and Ruby Sapphire. That's all I'm going to say.
4 of, right?
Maybe one.
All right, Kawa, back to you. Your story champ.
So I got a story to tell before I mention my prize that I got. So it was I believe it was the top 8, and I actually faced an Amber Steel player. Game 1 is the worst mistake I've ever made. I got incredibly greedy. I had 2 Diablos on the board. My opponent plays a whole new world. What do? I draw 21 cards. What does my opponent do straight after they do a whole new world? They play another whole new world. And believe it or not, I actually lost that game by getting milled out. My opponent, my Amber Steel player, milled me out. And I was counting. It got to the stage where I had like 2 beasts on board, 2 exerted Diablos, and I drew nothing. Well, actually, with the beasts, I have to draw. So I had to draw the cards off the beasts. Mm-hmm. That's basically how I lost the game. So yeah, don't get so greedy, kids, because that hand that I had with 21 cards, I couldn't even see all of the options I had in my hand. It was crazy.
Yeah, Beast is a must trigger,
know, Beast is must. What I want to know is, when you were at 20 cards, what made you decide you need another one?
Yeah, how'd you get to 21? Because for people who don't know, Whole New World, obviously it's a single trigger, discard, draw 7. But those Diablo triggers, those are individual triggers, and those are May triggers.
Yep.
So what? Yeah. So you had 20 cards in hand. You're like, I've got 3 cards left in deck. What made you go for the 21st?
I just had to get another song, right? Why not? I just had to. Actually, I'm not gonna lie. The hand I had with the 21 cards was so insane that I had like I could do like double or triple Bucky. I could like shift nearly all of my Diablos onto my 1-drop Diablo. It was absolutely insane. And then the dream was dead. But
and how many cards did you have to discard, or like were in your hand when your opponent played the next Whole New World?
When they played the next one? 21 cards.
Oh, you still had 21 cards in hand when they played another Whole New World?
No. So I had like nothing in my hand, basically. They did the first Whole New World. I drew 21 cards.
Then you go to 21.
And then they played another Whole New World.
It was on the same turn.
Yeah. The same turn, because I sang the Whole New World. Yeah, rookie error. But basically, I came. I won that game somehow. I won the other 2 games after that. But so I came second. everyone, the third and fourth place already grabbed their promo. First place just grabbed their promo, and I'm just handed the last promo in the box, and it's damaged, which definitely sucks. It's a bad feeling when you spend an entire day grinding and then you get handed your prize and it's like bent and stuff. What I will say is it came straight out of the box like that. It's not like it was sat somewhere or someone was like messing with it, whatever. Literally straight out of the box, it was damaged, and I have heard some stories already of it being damage in shipment and stuff like that. It's what I will say, and this is direct feedback that I've already given to Ravensburger, is they really need to increase the protection on these promo cards within the packaging, because they are extremely loose and they pretty much just come in that little paper stuff. I'm not saying that they need to necessarily give them top loaders or whatever, but if you can compare it to the OP kit that you receive the normal promos in for like league play and stuff like that, they are extremely well packaged, extremely well protected. So when you have high value items, not even just the value of them, like these are important cards that if people win them, some people might want to play with them, you know what I mean, like who knows. So yeah, I just implore them to try and package them a little bit better, and hopefully they do.
You're setting on top loader, why not? I mean, I don't think I think that with the volume they're doing is totally fine. It might be
the only TCG that I've seen, and I mean you'll know this, Brendan, but like Flesh and Blood puts a lot of their stuff in top loaders, right? Like I know, like they're very high value stuff. Yeah,
that's for a reason. It's because it was they were fucked up. In the early days they would get damaged in shipment, and they didn't want that. So what also is happening? So what you're referring to is actually they're in the PCG slabs, which is Premier Card Grading, which is owned by Matt Rogers. He's like an infamous Flesh and Blood player. Not infamous, a famous Flesh and Blood player, and he created a card grading company, and they did a direct deal with him. So what they did from there is they took the promotional cards that you would win at like Disney Lorcana Challenge, so like DFW or Bologna, those cards, and they have those. They're guaranteed to be a 9 or above on the grading scale, because what you were getting is you're getting people would get these very valuable promotional cards, and the quality would be vastly varying, right? And we're not talking about like, is the edge scraped or bent. It was is it centered, because that's actually a big deal with some of these cards. Like if you're talking about promotional cards, it can go from 20 30 more than $30,000. Like you don't want to get the one that hangs like deep left like that sucks. So that was sort of their what they did. But with the regular promos at Road to Nationals and PTQs, I do believe they're top loaded now because they would get damaged. And I understand it's an additional logistical process. It's going to slow things down, but I think it's important. Players care about these cards,
especially with more of them being out now. In terms of like with the next set championship, it's going to be top 8. So if they're going to be packaged the same way, like I would hope that they are going to be packaged a little bit better. So. Yeah, Flesh and Blood also did have a card replacement policy. I'm not sure where it's at right now. That was in the early days when it was a smaller game. Lorcana is just a way bigger game than that, so it could be I've asked about that. I got into customer service, and they sent me back a policy from the set championships, and they highlighted it saying that any promotional material that is like basically won within a set championships is non-replaceable. So it's just the policy.
I would say if it's like a common problem, I think they should look into maybe adding top loaders and things like that. Because although it would add a non-zero amount of time and effort and I guess money to the process, I do think it's worth it, because players, they work very hard for these promos, and the store championships are important to a lot of people. Like that's what gets people out to the local game store, I think, more than anything else right now.
It's the most competitive thing at the local level, right? Like people who can't travel to the challenges and stuff, like that's the highest level of Lorcana that they're going to be playing. So it is important that their prizes are well protected. Yeah,
this could ruin someone's entire day to grind this, and then you're just getting your prize.
I'm sorry, that was just very funny. Like, yeah, I think it did ruin someone's entire day.
It did. It felt really bad. It did.
Kava is probably above this.
But you know what was funny was, and like I understand, like I took it to heart, but everyone at the local game store, when they saw it, like they weren't like, oh, you got a damaged promo. They were like, oh, just it's damaged, and then they were all like, oh, what do we do? Will we roll for it, whatever? And then they were kind of memeing on me saying, you won 2 fucking store championships already. You should take the damaged one. But it's a meme. So, yeah.
Sweet. I guess in other news, the Flesh and Blood Pro Tour just finished last weekend.
It's in Amsterdam, right?
In Amsterdam, in Amsterdam. And the reason I bring it up is I usually don't do this, but one of my good friends is actually making a transition over to Lorcana. Not transition away, but coming over to Lorcana. And he's one of the best card gamers I think that exists.
And so it's not Brody, is it?
No, it's Tarek Patel. Tarek Patel is they call him the Doctor. He's a SCG grinder, so did very well in the SCG circuit. I think he played StarCraft professionally too, funny enough. But very, very, very accomplished Flesh and Blood player at this time. And just came off of a top 8 at Pro Tour Amsterdam. And he's going to be going to Toronto looking for people to test with, actually. A lot of my Flesh and Blood team. So we have a Flesh and Blood team called Team PCG Pass. It consists of people like Tarek, but also people like Simon Nielsen, so recent Magic the Gathering Pro Tour champion, Matt Rogers, we just talked about. A lot of those people are actually making the transition over to Lorcana to start playing these Lorcana challenges, which is cool.
Yeah,
so
it's awesome to see.
A lot of talent coming in. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm super excited for Toronto now.
Yeah, I'm excited too.
Kala's going to be there.
Yeah, I'm excited to maybe get someone to test with because that's a first.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Is like I have people hitting me up for testing now. Like actually, Moyne, because this is a consistent sore spot with Moyne. He's like, "Hey, it's 11 a.m. on a Wednesday. Why aren't you guys testing with me?" It's like, bro, middle of the workday.
I never understand.
Yeah, these guys are looking to test. So we'll start setting up a group, and I think if we get a nice focused testing group together, we can maybe get one of you guys to top one of these tournaments. Can't be winning 5. Can't be getting 5 Ursalas.
I'm not topping.
No day 2s.
Yeah, rank 1 Pixelborn wins every set champs.
But can't make day 2. Yeah.
Not yet. Anyway, we have a crazy long spilled ink section, which is our listener question section. If you have a question read out in next week's podcast, you can shoot us a comment on YouTube and we'll get it queued up.
Yeah, so starting off with Ludini or Ludin. Hey again, guys. Not a question, but something that might be worth passing off to the other listeners as a great learning moment for me. At my second set champs, I took a game loss because during deck check, the judge flagged me for writing just the first name of the card, not the whole thing. For example, I wrote For Maleficent, not For Maleficent Sorceress. It totally makes sense in hindsight. There are multiple Maleficents, and if not specific, I could be switching between games. That's what I get for both being lazy during list write-up and not printing off Dreamborn beforehand. Please learn from my mistake. All of those newer to the competitive scene. Yeah, I always recommend, and I'm seeing this. I mean, at store champs level, I understand because some people might not be used to it, but every event I go to, the morning before, I just go to Dreamborn, I print off the list. If you guys have a printer, definitely do this because it's a lot easier than actually writing all of this stuff out. And then I just bring it with me. So something else, it's just another example of how you could get like DQ'd from a set champs. So the first set champs I went to, I made top 8, and Kim actually made top 8 as well. It was her first top 8, and her opponent, who is a very good friend of mine, got deck checked and got pulled up on the fact that he had most of his deck double sleeved and some cards single sleeved. And the reasoning was, it was, there was definitely nothing malicious there. I think he said he was on a night out before, and at 2 a.m. he just put in the new cards that he wanted to put into his deck and didn't think of doing double sleeving. So of course we're all friends, so nothing was done. The judge was very, very much just like, if you do this at a major event, you will be heavily penalized. Just don't do it again. And of course, unfortunately, Kim lost, and she was like, "Oh, you should have got DQ'd. I should have got an Ursala." So yeah, it was quite funny. But these are things to be aware of. You know what I mean? It's small things like this, and yeah, the printing the deck list, the best way to minimize that, like the commenter said, yeah, just print off a deck list beforehand if you can.
Yeah, it's a good PSA. I think a lot of people don't know about this actually, but yeah, it is a game loss at least.
Yeah. From my last set champs, I have I guess a few stories to tell regarding this one, or not necessarily regarding this, but so I played 2 set champs on the same store, and they charged 10 euros extra for the ticket.
Wait, 2 set champs in the same store? You mean from 2 different sets, right? Not in the same.
No, they just had a set champ Saturday and Sunday. I don't know why specifically, but
hold up, so, is that allowed?
Okay, they charge 10 extra euros if you finished in the top 25.
Okay, so what I wanted to say is that they charged 10 extra euros and then gave us like a food voucher for 10 euros, but they didn't have the capacities to really support like 50 people. Now, of course, if they have this voucher, they're going to order food, and there was like big a little bit of delay and everyone was overworked. So I don't think they really were prepared for handling with their own actions. And the other one was we didn't really have a judge. And to the credit of the group of players that I was playing with, it was never necessary. Everything was handled by the players themselves. But I think it could have easily had a dispute where then there would have not been an impartial judge available. And
so the ruling with judges is we spoke about this a lot of other set champs. I know Ravensburger reached out to any of the stores saying that judges are highly recommended if you don't have one for the moment. They were like, it's fine, just run the event as best as you can. And luckily for us, one of the players at the event, he offered to judge the event. And I know what you're probably gonna say. Oh, they're playing in the event. They need a judge for the judge. This type of stuff. But we weren't too bothered about that. If anything kind of came up, or whatever. So even having somebody like that, especially to kind of, let's say there's new players coming into a set champ. If you've any questions, just raise your hand and I'll be over to you when I can. Even if the person's playing is better than having no judge at all, in my opinion. But,
yeah. Also, the only thing that I did was when overtime started, I told everyone that turns were starting because otherwise I would have been there for ages.
Yeah, no, that's good. I do that as well. Yeah, I mean, it's important for people, when it hits time, even if because the judge can miss it or whatever, if you just give a time on round quite loudly in the store, that people, will then know, right? Because I'm the person that is always asking, judge, how much time? But not many people do that, honestly. I ask a lot. I'm like, okay, there's 20 minutes left. Oh, there's 7 minutes left. I ask a lot, but I don't see too many other people asking about it. So, yeah.
Moyen's just hovering over, breathing in your ear, and he's like, "That's time.
That's time." Turn 0, baby. Yeah.
Turn 0.
So next comment is from Keen. Says, love all the content you guys do. Keep it up. How do you decide what ink type fits your playstyle? Recently started playing in person and picked up Sapphire Steel because I had cards available. However, I feel like the deck doesn't fit my playstyle, and whenever I play a bad matchup, I struggle much more focused on the game plan of Sapphire Steel. Just curious to how you approach analyzing what strategy fits how you play. Thanks again for all of the amazing content. Great comment. Brendan, do you want to take this one? Because I know you have a lot of experience when it comes to certain playstyles.
Yeah, because you are very biased and you have a playstyle.
Yep.
Yeah, anything not Emerald. Right up my alley. I don't like so Emerald doesn't really have any current competitive ways to play the game that aren't discard or aggressive focused, and I don't really like either of those strategies. So I tend to, for me, it's really not in combination. It's more archetype. I guess I do tend towards the inks that have more card draw, like Amethyst and Sapphire.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, I don't really care about it's not like I have an affinity for Ruby or anything like that. I like having access to be prepared.
Oh, that's affinity for Ruby and Amethyst. That's all I'll say.
I prefer to draw as many cards as possible and have as many decision points as possible in a game. So that's what I focus on. So for the most part, I avoid Emerald at this point because currently I think it's the only ink color that is not super flexible out of some very specific archetypes. Maybe Amber is up there as well, but Amber Steel doesn't feel like an aggro deck to me.
I think that's fair. I think Amber has a lot of decision cards more so than Emerald, maybe. Well, I kind of agree with that.
Me personally, I wish I didn't have any sort of playstyle and I was just a robot.
Yeah,
but then but that's not really true. I also often tend to maybe enjoy decks more where I feel like I have more agency, more interesting decision points in the game.
And to offset those two answers, Kala.
Yeah, I just play weird shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Every time Brendan put it best on a few weeks ago, and it's like whenever you guys think I'm playing something, I'm probably playing something else or I'm playing something weird. Yeah.
Also, as soon as we post a winning deck list in the group chat, it is immediately on the no-fly list for Kala. He's like, nope, fuck that. Not playing that. Well, here's this great Ruby Amethyst deck. He's like, okay. How about Steel Amethyst? You're like, bro, come on.
Yeah, what can I say? But I'm excited to see what Emerald can bring to the table. I mean, we're in the middle of doing our set review, myself and Moyen, and on next week's pod, we'll probably dive into some of the bangers. It's been fun. Brendan, you missed it, by the way. Moyen did the Brendan Classic to me when we were recording yesterday. I said, Kawa, what do you think of this card? And I'm like, oh shit, here we go.
Actually, I was about to spill all my entire opinion about the card, and I was like, actually, you go first.
What was it a trap?
I actually can't remember what card it was. I think it was a bit of a trap, yeah.
It was the 2-cost uninkable gain 2 lore in
it was that card, yeah. But yeah, it's a fun time. Stay tuned to the channel, guys.
I see a lot of that on Twitter, by the way. There's also that 2-cost inkable, basically like, lets you put a card from your hand in your inkwell, and people are like, will this replace One Jump Ahead? And I'm like, right.
Yeah, we had a lot of cards where we said, oh, as Brendan would say, this is magical Christmas land. Yeah.
Well, nobody really... what I thought was funny is I actually read through the thread on Twitter, and I thought about commenting on it, but nobody in the entire thread mentioned the distinction that this card was card disadvantage and that One Jump Ahead was card advantage.
Oh no, but One Jump Ahead also costs you a card. One card from your deck.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, this is inkable versus uninkable, like all this stuff, and I was like, bro, the main distinction, like for me, and I feel like nobody's bringing it up, is like One Jump Ahead draws you a card, basically, it puts it in your inkwell. Yeah.
So if you like to, okay, I'm not necessarily saying this 2-cost inkable is like terrible, but
yes,
I just want to draw the parallel between ramping with something like a Mickey Mouse or ramping with a Winnie Pooh and then inking 2 cards from your hand next turn. That has never been good either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Next comment is from SPC. With the new set having even more discard cards, why do you think Ravensburger is so keen on supporting the mechanic, despite it giving a lot of players an unenjoyable experience playing against it? So, I mean, we can speak upon this a little bit more, because we've already looked through the Emerald cards, right? Do you think they had a lot of discard stuff? I mean, the only thing that I can think off the top of my head right now is... it's like that Prince John's Mirror, right? The item card that makes...
And there's the 3-cost uninkable that has like 3 options if you pay 2 ink. One of them, your opponent discards.
I know. I don't really count that card because the flexibility of it, like, I don't think that's the option. We discussed that anyway. I don't think that's the option that you're going to be choosing primarily anyways.
Yeah, that's the... I think you will choose it a decent bit of the time, but even then, I don't think these are like heavy discard cards. If it's 5 cost, you have to discard a single card.
Especially compared to now, right? I don't know how you could call that like, but yeah, it is. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and then there's also the Magic Mirror. I think most of the time you should be fine just trying to dump your hand, and then because you very much see it coming, it's less disruptive, because it doesn't like hit you in the head before you can do something about it.
Yeah, I think that there's one part of this sentence which I just want to dig into a little bit, which is the end where they're like, Ravensburger is so keen on supporting mechanic despite it giving a lot of players an unenjoyable experience playing against it. I think it's easy to kind of say that and accept it as truth, and it's easy to not give credence to the idea that discard is a mechanic that some people like. And I just feel like the people who actually enjoy Emerald Steel right now, and they exist, I promise they exist somewhere. I mean, fuck, I know I haven't met one either, but they exist, and they really get drowned out by the loud voices that hate Emerald Steel. But you have to appreciate that some people actually like enjoy this playstyle, enjoy this archetype, and yeah, like even you might think that it adversely affects the majority rather than sort of like it nets more negative experiences than positive experience, but you can really never know. And you have to appreciate that some people like certain playstyles and, some people like other playstyles. But
to be fair, the comment also just said it gives unenjoyable experience playing against it. And I think I'm not sure there is like there's a group of players that love playing against Emerald Steel.
Maybe. I kind of like playing against it as Ruby Sapphire because it's just so free.
Honestly, I still don't enjoy playing against them, even if I'm on Ruby Sapphire, even if I win a lot.
Sure, yeah. Next comment is from Hero. I think the major reason Emerald Steel isn't the most played deck is the cost of running the deck. The people who can afford to run it are probably the ones running it. Well, I mean, while that's true, I was still surprised for at least bottom and stuff for like, if that's the reason... yeah, okay. I don't think that's the reason why everyone's not running Emerald Steel. I think it's a combination of what we were just talking about, is that it's not everyone's playstyle. Not everyone wants to just hop on this deck. But I was also surprised with just like, how many people ball out and just have so many people playing Emerald Steel, like, you know what I mean? But it's definitely a factor, but I don't think it's the defining factor why everybody doesn't play the deck. As we just talked about, people like playing certain types of deck, you know what I mean?
Also, I think it's easy to form this narrative where you say this is the reason why it's not the most played deck, and then you could forget that it was how many was if 16 players more played Emerald Steel, it would have been the most played deck. It was very, very close to being the most played deck already. So it is already a deck that is seeing lots of play.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I think so, like more than I would expect. I do not see price impact like the meta too much in. Even like, so I live in Dallas, maybe that's why. Even in my local tournaments, it doesn't feel like price affects the meta too much. But I think it like Lorcana challenges, it's minimal at best, to be honest. I actually don't think it's
the players that are going to the challenge, 99% of them are competitive players, will want to be playing these high level decks, and they'll be able to afford it, and they'll play it, you know what I mean? So
especially people that fly out, or they don't just go to one in their country, or that's very nearby, but if they play multiple, I think if they think something's the best and they want to play that, they would usually jump over the factor of cost.
Next one is from Street. Love the pod. Blah blah lol. Spilled ink question. Every set I deconstruct my decks and build 3 new ones. I use each of the 6 colors once and make the 3 decks. Last set, for instance, was purple steel, blue red, and lemon lime. What 3 decks would you guys recommend for this set that would use all 6 colors? Assume I have play sets of everything. That's a very fun thing to do. I specifically remember I used to always do this for when a new Hearthstone expansion would drop, and it would be my favorite thing because there'd be a certain amount of deck slots, right? I don't know, like 24 decks or whatever. And I just remember Xing all of them, saying, all right, this is it. We're going to build fresh decks, all of the new cards. So I like this comment. This is a lot of fun.
Okay, so
go ahead.
Yeah, the way we would do this is like, okay, so there's some colors that only really work with a few certain colors, right? So emerald, I think you need to pair with like steel or maybe amber. The problem is if you pair emerald with steel, then what do you pair amber with? The only other like almost decent combination would be ruby amber.
Yeah, I found it, right? So this is what we're doing. We're doing ruby amber. We're doing emerald steel. We're getting on the blurple train, guys. That's what we're doing. We're getting on the blurple.
So I think because we want to avoid doing that, we just go lemon lime, so emerald amber, so that you can still go.
Then you're just gonna go sapphire steel and ruby amethyst.
Yes, yeah. Then you have 2 very good meta decks, and then you just have 1 rogue deck in there. I mean, I think that is the if you like go to a tournament and you have to bring 3 decks that have all 6 colors in them, that's
not what they're saying though. They're asking for the new set of trying trying new set. Yeah. Yeah, I use each of the 6 colors once. This is exactly what they're saying. They're saying, if I had play sets of the next set, guys, let's build the exact same decks we have now. Let's go.
That's fun. I love that.
That was still a nice puzzle to figure out what 3 decks I would play this set. Next set, I don't know. I don't even know what decks exist next set. We haven't even looked at all the cards yet.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, fun. All I will say is that I agree. It's a very, very fun thing to do. I don't know, maybe give Blurple a shot. We were entertaining it a little bit, Moyen. Myself and Moyen, as you guys will see, we were cooking. We were talking about, well, actually, to be fair, we were talking about Amber Emerald, crazy combo, the Queen OTK deck. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to be good, but it was fun talking about it.
Yeah.
All right, next comment is from Illure. On the topic at the end of changing the format to allow more Swiss into Date 2, would more prize tickets / promos have to be incentivized? And this is my first TCG, so maybe competitive players don't really care for tickets or promos, mats, but getting cut at the end of day 1 gives people a chance to grind outside events day 2 to still get some of these prizes. If I'm understanding your format change correctly, people would have less of a chance to grind side events when they're eliminated. Of course, people can always just drop the main competition if they really want tickets to get prizes. Is this in relation to something you mentioned last week, Brandon?
Yeah, day 2 Swiss.
Okay.
But
instead of day 2 single in.
Also, if missing out on tickets is the issue that can always be counteracted by just providing tickets for the main event result.
The only reason all of you like side events right now, and I'm not saying side events suck, but the reason why people are like very hyped about it is because the EV is there. The EV will eventually not really be there. Like it just won't. It's just.
I mean, it's already gone down. Yeah. It really has. Yeah.
So,
especially when all the cards are gone.
Yeah, you can add prizes to the main event. The whole idea is that you as a player are traveling very far. You're investing a lot of time, money, and you're doing it when you're going to a Disney Lorcana challenge. For the most part, the majority of people that are going there, so the 2,000 players that enter the competitor, are doing it to play a high level event. And I want to give them as much time to do that and give them as many good high level games that they're traveling for as possible. And Day 2 Swiss does that. The 3%-ish cut on Day 2, it just feels really bad. And then the single limb also feels bad. But ultimately, it's the vast majority of your tournament doesn't make Day 2, and now they're all on side events. So I think I definitely think it should be Day 2 Swiss. I strongly believe that. But also, I think on the Sunday, of course, you should have side events, but you should also have another competitive tournament, another less competitive, but competitive tournament going on that players can enter. Because players are coming to Disney Lorcana challenges, not all of them, but a lot of them, because they want to play at a higher level. They want to play at a higher level than their local game store or the store championships. And I think you should give them as much opportunity as possible to do that.
All right, so next comment is from Dad Gamer. Past weekend, I ran Ruby Amethyst with a 4 Maui 2 Herc split, and Herc was such a castle sniper. It killed at least one castle every game, went undefeated until top 4, where their mirror just outdrew insanely against me. Just not sure on the split on Maui and Herc going forward until the set 5 release. In 4 mirrors throughout the Day 2, 2 Herc was great, but he just doesn't feel good in any other matchups. Moyen, do you want to speak upon this? Because this is within Ruby Amethyst, right? Not in Ruby Sapphire, which you've been playing it in.
So it's the same. I mean, it's very similar in Ruby Sapphire. It's only really good for that. But when that happens, bam, castle gone. You often win off the tempo swing. You have the Hercules still on board. But so in Ruby Amethyst, I think the opportunity cost might be a bit higher. Having an extra incubant in that deck is a bit more expensive than it is in a deck like Ruby Sapphire that can maybe counteract that with Quill. So especially 2 seems a little excessive. I think maybe at most I would play it once, if even that, in Ruby Amethyst. And even in Ruby Sapphire, you really have to be mindful of the cost of putting it into your deck when it's uninkable and bad in most matchups, and really weigh up, okay, how much Ruby Amethyst are you expecting for any particular event to have it be worthwhile?
Really, yeah, I feel like it's probably really tough in Ruby Amethyst, because at least in Ruby Sapphire, you have some options that you can maybe turn it to ink if it's if it's a matchup that you're not really going to use it through Fishbone Quill or something like that. But if it is true, like in 90% of your games, if you're not specifically waiting for the castle, it's pretty bad. And then also you have to hold this card in your hand the whole time until you're kind of expecting a castle, or you have to play it onto a board that's just not great to really play a 7-3 that might just get one. I mean, it might kill something, which is fine, but like that's it, right? So your Maui might have survived instead, but yeah, definitely tough. User says Pokemon used to cut to top 128 and do single elimination rounds from there, exactly like Lorcana's top 64 cut, except Pokemon was cutting to 128 at 800 player events, which is already more inclusive than 64 at 1 to 2k events. Pokemon has since switched to 9 rounds day 1, then cut to everyone with 621 or 504 or better records. On day 2, you play 6 more Swiss rounds, then cut to top 8. However, for this upcoming Pokemon season, they're doing an asymmetrical cut for top 8 and just awarding buys to the high seed until it is a true top 8. Lorcana could and should easily implement this. Day 2 cutoff for Lorcana should be roughly at all 41 to 44-ish point players. I have no strong opinions there. This system works well for 2k plus player events, as most regionals easily hit that for Pokemon in the last few seasons. Not only is this more enjoyable and inclusive, which fits a trend we've seen Ravensburger lean towards as set championships look to open up pricing to top 8, but it also hurts like heck to go X1 and get Elind in the first or second round of single elimination. At Pokemon Nats in 2012, I was 9-1 after top 128 and lost in top 64 and went home at 9-2. Granted, the time limit was 40 minutes for best of 3 and going first was decided by dice roll, but that just feels bad. In Lorcana, even if the odds of the X1 losing in 64 or 32 are lessened by the higher seed choice, the odds are still not zero. And to be clear, it's fine for the high seed to lose, but it feels not fine for an X1 or an X11 to go home early because of a Game 3 brick. Let's keep them in the event to fight for their top 8 spot.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah. I mean, is anybody like, hell yeah, single win? Love that. Anybody?
It's fine.
Bro, it sucks.
It's
just like, in my opinion, I understand the argument for it. And I'm also happy that Ravensburger is willing to try new stuff out. And I understand. But I think it is a almost objectively inferior format to more Swiss rounds and a lower threshold of variance for 2,000 players who are traveling across the world in the United States to come to this event. Like, I don't like it. I think a lot of people don't like it.
So what system do you like? Is it like Swiss again and then no top cut at all?
So Swiss day 1 and then day 2 cut is like an X2 or X3 cut depending on Swiss rounds. So you cut to like 30-40% of the tournament. You do another round of another day of Swiss, and then at the end of that you cut the top 8.
Okay, so there's still single elim top 8.
Yeah, still single elim top 8, of course. You have to find
because you were like kind of whiling up against single elim, but you do recognize that it's kind of necessary at some point.
Yeah, for sure in top 8. I think that 124, top 64, top 32, I think, like, honestly, to me, it just seems so inferior.
Okay, yeah. That I have no issue with.
I just want more Swiss in general and them to actually recognize the amount of players. Like you said, recognize the amount of players that are coming to these events and realize that the top 64 cut day 2 is just like, we were just talking about it before the podcast. It's the variance is just insane. Like you genuinely, I mean, with every, we're playing card games here. With every card game, yes, you will have to get lucky to some extent, but you really just have to be on fire to make day 2 most of the time.
It's not even about the variance for me. It's that this system, the core, like one of the core competencies of the system is you as the player traveling to the tournament playing less Lorcana rather than more Lorcana. That's not good.
I think that's fair. That's
I like more Lorcana.
That's why we're playing. Like that's why we're showing up. That's why we're traveling, and that's why we're coming to these challenges. Is we want to play the game, and this system is a big not play the game system. So
I mean, you play the game a lot one day, but then
the second day,
play high stakes for the next day.
Yeah, and then that's exactly what you said, right? Then the other day, you're like, oh, I got to grind these side events to try and make some money. Like, you know what I mean? I mean, again, that's not everybody's opinion, but I think a lot of players, after being, these competitive players who want to be playing in these main events, competitive events, are like, well, I've missed out on the main thing. Let me just grind this to try and get something back. And it's a bit of fun, but I think they'd still prefer to, like you said, playing like a second day main event with we're not showing up to play side events, period.
Like if you hosted a DLC and you said, hey, it's all side events, you can win some Rapunzels and some t-shirts, you would not have 2,000 people showing up. People are coming because they want to play the game. They want to play the game competitively. I understand as a casual audience. I do. But the casual audience is not the core audience of the Disney Lorcana Challenge. Even if there's a lot of casual players there, it is not the core target audience. These are your competitive events. And I think they should be structured like competitive events. And I think there is there's vastly more integrity in a day 1, day 2 Swiss. And even screw the variance argument. The variance argument is just like, it's such a weak argument in my opinion, because you're right, there is more variance. You're having a 3% cut. But that's not what matters. What matters is that the current system means you play less Lorcana. And that's just not why we're there. And I would just love to, like, if we all give feedback on the DLCs, like who's advocating for a day 2 3% cut, cut to top 64, which is like, barely any of the players. Who's advocating for that? And who's also advocating for single limb as you go from 64 to 32 to 16 to top 8?
Yeah,
I think if we pulled the players, it would be
have they actually given reasoning or given a statement as to like why they think that's good, or like they're, because I haven't heard any reasoning for it personally.
I know the reasoning. It's like, it's much easier to understand as like a casual player, apparently. Like it's just an easier system to understand. That's what they think. It's like a much more casual friendly system. Yeah. That's
but then coming back to your point, right? Oh, it's an easier system for casuals to understand at a competitive event, right?
Well, for some players, this is their first TCG.
Yeah, and even at these competitive events, there's lots of players where I do think this is much easier for them to understand. And
yeah.
like
I don't think it's that complicated. Like
that's
don't think,
what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know. But the argument where it's like, hey, we can't do a day 2 Swiss because it's more complicated. Like, I don't think it's going to confuse people that much. I really don't. Like, I understand that it is more complicated, but I don't think it's to the extent where you should sacrifice the enjoyability and integrity of the tournament to have what it is, in my opinion, an almost objectively worse tournament structure that leaves a lot of feels bads and is atypical to the TCG, to the TCG experience. It's atypical to some of the other big TCGs that are competitive, and it's just it ultimately leads to people playing less games rather than more, and that's not why we're coming to the tournaments. Is the number one thing I hope they switch, because all the other arguments, people are very fired up about a lot of things. They're fired up about not getting into events and selling out. They're fired up about 2-game versus 3-game format. Like, there's other pain points, but in my opinion, screw all of that. Like, because you can make arguments that those are good or they're bad, and there's a discussion to have. I think that the discussion around a day 2 top 64 cut off of a 2,000 player and not having day 2 Swiss and all of this is just, I think it is just so much worse. I think it is so much worse. So I hope that they change it.
So I think, at least personally, I haven't heard a lot of people talk about that as an issue. So maybe it's like an issue people don't really, not really aware of that exists.
So what? Maybe more people actually just have to start speaking up about it if that's how they feel about it. Maybe.
Yeah, but maybe it's also the case that the vast majority of players doesn't care that much if it cuts to top cut or into second day Swiss.
Maybe I know
that's the case.
So the people that I talk to, it could be biased because I'm talking to a subset of ultra competitive players, but I just it's a system I'm really not a fan of, and I hope that they switch. And I'm not going to make the argument about less variance. More I'm just gonna make the argument that I'm showing up to play Lorcana, and the current system means I play less, and I don't like that.
Yep,
that's a casual and a competitive argument in the same. Yeah,
cool. Yep, that's the listener question section. If you guys want to have your question read out on the next podcast, be sure to leave us a comment down below.
All right, main topic. Let's talk about these decks from Stat Championships and also looking towards Bologna. So, Moyen, you took 3 different lists, and Kawa, you took the 4th different of that. You took Green Steel, and Moyen took Sapphire Steel, Ruby Amethyst, and a couple weeks ago took Ruby Sapphire to store championship finishes. Moyen, looking towards Bologna, where are you kind of leaning right now? Like, what color or ink combination has sparked your interest?
Well, I don't want to like just publicly announce what deck I'm playing, because I think that is very bad for my chances to make top cut. But I can talk about what I like and what I don't like. So I think Ruby Amethyst is decently well positioned in the meta, but I think it might be the deck I'm least likely to bring, because I don't think the Emerald Steel matchup's fine at all. I think people are coping. I've said that like every week on the pod now, and my opinion hasn't changed even after testing it more. And I did top 4 with the set champs where I played this, but I played against 3 Buckies, lost twice, and I can't say I got high rolled or anything. I think that's kind of just that's expected to happen. I beat 1, lose to 2. I think that's pretty fair. Then I think Ruby Sapphire is actually now it's less popular. It's almost like a rogue pick, but I think it's a really, really good pick, because Ruby Amethyst performed really poorly recently. It might not necessarily mean we see less of it immediately, but it could mean like a slight decline in. But also, we have to consider that while it did perform poorly in terms of conversion rate, and this many people played it, this many people made top cut, but at the end of the day, it still won the event. So like the narrative might still be Ruby Amethyst performed well, even if it statistically didn't. So that's also a reason why maybe it didn't decline. But if it declines, also Ember Steel has gotten more popular. This is one of the few decks that has a very good matchup against Ember Steel. So I think Ruby Sapphire is still like in a fantastic spot, also beats up on the Buckies. And then I think Sapphire Steel is also very well rounded. And I think if you tech it for Ruby Amethyst, where you play like 2 to 3 Argus, play a few Rise of the Titans, and also focus in on like going for an early Tamatoa, for example, I actually do think Ruby Amethyst is a good matchup for this deck. And I think a few weeks ago that people wouldn't really have thought that way. But also with how popular Ruby Amethyst is, Sapphire Steel can easily afford to tech for that. So I think Sapphire Steel is in a really good spot too. And Emerald Steel, I don't think I'm going there just one event before it gets banned. I got this far without playing it. I don't need to join them now. Even if it is, of course, in a very good spot, a very good deck. And then I think Ember Steel is also great, as it's a deck that, like Sapphire Steel, is not great against Ruby Sapphire, but I think has pretty good matchups against both Ruby Amethyst and also Emerald Steel. So I think lots of decks are in very good positions. Me personally, I'm leaning a little bit away from Ruby Amethyst just because I don't like the Emerald Steel matchup.
Yeah, let's talk about so I need Moyne's going to send me his Dreamborn link. So, by the way, if that somehow never if Moyne never talks about a list that he's played, go look at his Twitter. So, Moyne_HS, which you'll see on the overlay.
Every list I played at Set Champs is on my Twitter.
Yeah, but I'll try to get them in the description. Let's talk about the exact makeups of this list. So your Ruby Amethyst list looks a lot like Ed's list. So Ed, we had on the pod last week. You think this is the future of the list with the 8-1 drops, the no Beaking Undisputed, and potentially no Lady Tremaines? But main things I want to highlight are no Beaking Undisputed, 8-1 drops, and maybe even like the 4-beat approach. You think that's the future of the list right now in this metagame?
I think, well, it might be. I don't think it has to be. I think it's a meta call. This type of list is better in the mirror and against Emerald Steel, but it's worse against both Sapphire decks. So depending on what you expect, the list could either look like this or maybe be a little less consistent to have a little bit more power, like Beaking Undisputed and Tremaine against the Sapphire decks. I don't think you ever go below 3 Medusa. I think 2 Medusa was a little bit crazy. And the one seems to perform very well. I'm not sure you need any more than that. It's not really. It's still not core to whatever the deck wants to do. It's more like it can kind of catch people off guard and also give them something to play around with. There's lots of value in that too.
I want to talk about Ruby Sapphire. So Ruby Sapphire kind of gets for me, I know that it's an unpopular deck right now, which I think is crazy. Like, it's one of the least played decks, but this, in my opinion, I think that Ruby Sapphire has the potential to be the best deck in the game. And that's because Ruby Sapphire has one of the best core card packages. Like, I think the core of Ruby Sapphire is just so strong. But it has room for all of these tech cards. Like, it can be retrofitted to suit the metagame that you expect to show up. And I think we saw that in Dallas. Like, I'm sure there was a lot of Ruby Sapphires that showed up with stock lists, were not tech for the Ruby Amethyst matchup, and got destroyed. But the ones that did perform decently well. We had some people run deep into top 32, top 16. And I do think that Ruby Sapphire has the potential, if you can accurately predict the metagame, to be one of the most well-positioned lists. And this is what I would be looking at if I was attending Bologna. Like, we even saw, like, if we're picking out Moyne's list, which is pretty similar to some of the lists that showed up, pretty similar to Sailor's list, I believe, that showed up to Dallas Fort Worth. The addition of these 3 Pegasus, the 3-1, as well as the Hercules, I think have drastically changed the matchup spread of this deck. How are you feeling about Ruby Sapphire right now? I kind of feel like you share that opinion, though, even before I ask you.
Yeah, for sure. It beats up on all the steel decks. It beats up on the Amber Steel that's getting more popular. It's good against Emerald Steel. And I personally think it's also fair against Sapphire Steel. So really, if you can kind of get the Ruby Amethyst matchup, if you can practice that a lot, get the techs down, and like kind of still at least make it a close matchup, I think it's very well positioned. And you have good chances to 2-0 everything that's not Ruby Amethyst. And Ruby Amethyst, realistically, you should not 0-2 a lot against either. I think on the play you're still pretty favored, and then it might be hard to 2-0 them, but you should at least get the 3 points into them. The 2 Hercules, I'm not sure. They might actually be a little much, as especially when the Ruby Amethyst player expects it, they can just never play early castles and then kind of leave Hercules stranded in your hand, where you also still might not feel comfortable inking it with Quill, because they're still in the back of your mind. You might still need it if they do go castle, but they can really kind of play around that and just wait with castles until much later in the game, where they can drop like 2 or 3 in the same turn, where maybe you weren't able to hold on to Hercules that long, or maybe still you can clear multiple castles. So they still have some ways to counterplay the Hercules, especially if you play 2. I think as a one of its, like the first copy of Hercules is much better than the second one, and the second one might be close to like maybe not being good enough.
Yeah, what's funny about this Pegasus too, and even this Hercules, is that they kind of insulated against these edict effects via Lady Tremaine and Beaking Undisputed, which were relevant because those hitting your Tamatoa were, you could get tempoed out, pretty easily. And these characters were non-zero and actually protecting against that. That being said, the Ruby Amethyst list that won the DFW, and it's probably going to be the more popular version of it, does not run any of those effects, which actually I think makes these characters a little bit worse because they were actually serving some rules outside of their primary role. Like they had a decent secondary role in the deck.
Yeah, so maybe the Hercules not so much, but definitely the any 2-drop you play was also great Beaking Undisputed protection. I'm not sure the most So I personally think still, even after Dallas, there might be more Ruby Amethyst lists in Bologna that play more than 0 B-Kings than there is that actually play 0. But of course, okay, it gets less popular. Maybe, of course, the 2-drop gets less important for fighting against that. But I do still think if you queue into Ruby Amethyst, unfortunately, you still don't have this luxury of thinking, okay, surely my opponent doesn't play B-King Undisputed. It's still popular enough where you will not be allowed to just completely ignore the existence of the card.
And moving on to Sapphire Steel here. Sapphire Steel is another deck list that I feel like has a lot of variation, player to player and tournament to tournament, and has a lot of those tech slots that you can add in. You mentioned the Argus and things like, what is the item, the item destruction called again? Rise of the Titans?
Rise of the Titans, yeah.
Yeah, so you have these toolbox options in the deck. Where do you feel like Sapphire Steel sort of lands in this metagame? It performed a lot better, and it was actually more represented than I expected in Dallas. Dallas-Fort Worth, it was more played than Ruby Sapphire. I think it was like the 3rd most played deck or 4th most played deck. It was very well represented. Where do you feel like this is landing right now? And do you think this is also, similar to Ruby Sapphire in the sense that you need to accurately predict the metagame if you're going to show up with a sort of well-suited Ruby Sapphire list? Or Sapphire Steel list, my bad.
Well, yes, it helps to accurately predict the metagame and because in Sapphire Steel you can build your deck in lots of different ways. And for example, the count of Babooms, the count of Titans, Argis, what 5-drop do you play other than Corksdrift? All of that will make you better in some matchups and worse in others, generally. And so on average, predicting the metagame and then building your deck towards that will be fruitful, but at the same time, you might also have a deck that's like built perfectly towards the meta and then face some other matchups, or not predict the meta accurately, but at least face the matchups that you tag for. All of that is like very, very easy to happen, I feel like. Yeah.
Why would I play Sapphire Steel over Ruby Sapphire? Is it just that RA matchup?
Yeah, that's by far the biggest significant difference between those two decks. Is this deck is significantly better against Ruby Amethyst. While Ruby Sapphire is better in more matchups, but all of those together might be as important as the matchup against Ruby Amethyst. Also, so the other matchups that Ruby Sapphire is better into would be Amber Steel and Sapphire Steel and Ruby Sapphire, which, okay, 2 of those are like kind of mirrors, but Ruby Sapphire is favored into Sapphire Steel, so it's better against Sapphire Steel than the mirror, and also the mirror is better than having an unfavored matchup. So it's kind of better in those 3 matchups. And I think against Emerald Steel, lots of people think Sapphire Steel is much better against Emerald Steel than Ruby Sapphire. But I actually think it's very, very close. Both decks are quite good against it. And it's usually just players that don't play Ruby Sapphire that don't understand how good that matchup is if you play it properly as Ruby Sapphire.
How does Prince John affect Ruby Sapphire's matchup into Emerald Steel?
It does make it worse, actually. So because they have a little bit more sustained pressure, they can discard your like one to 2 cards a turn for a little bit longer by pressuring the board. They can, if they go Bucky, Prince John, then a few Flood Bonds, that will mean that post your first board wipe, they have a better refill after that. So that does actually help them a lot. And it's a good thing that you point this out, because Prince John doesn't actually help a lot against Sapphire Steel, because against Sapphire Steel, you can just want to go Bucky into Floodborn. Because if you go Bucky into John, your opponent's already, let's say, okay, on the play, you go Bucky into John, then and the Sapphire Steel player just goes Mickey or Quill on 3. then you just got one from their hand and ramp one, and draw one. And then if they go grab your sword still, if you were not able to discard it, then it suddenly didn't just get rid of the Bucky, potentially Diablo, but also the Prince John on top of that. So I think Prince John is great in Emerald Steel, but it helps against both Ruby matchups, and it doesn't really do a lot against Sapphire Steel.
And finally, Kawa, the deck that cannot be denied, the deck that has consistently overperformed tournament to tournament, despite people expecting it to show up, and despite being looked at as the best deck in the format. It's Emerald Steel. How are you feeling? Like, is that going to be your default pick for Bologna? And do you think that it's going to convert as well as it has in previous Disney Lorcana challenges? Do you think it will convert as well at Bologna? Because this is Bucky's actual last hurrah.
Mm-hmm.
And people are surely expecting this deck. Is this conversion rate finally going to suffer for having a target on its back, or will it just still deny everyone?
I think you'll still see a lot of it in top court, honestly. Like, I think the deck is just so incredibly powerful. If you have that opener against certain decks, it is still incredibly difficult to beat. This one drop Diablo to see the opponent's hand to then be able to play your opener around what they have as well, it can be really, really important and really, really useful. Like my testing that I've been doing of late, like the only change I already made with the previous set champs was what you guys were discussing already, which is I put in 2 Prince Johns. I made sure that my sudden shield count was up at 4, and the Johns have been okay for me. Again, I haven't done like extensive testing, but I'm so glad I went up to 4 sudden shields, because I just really, really, really love that card, especially when it's like the type of card that, like when Bookie's on the board, players can expect, right? I need to kind of hold this amount of cards. There's probably a Floodborn coming down, but Sudden Chill at times can take players by surprise. If you play the Ursala, obviously Ursala Deceiver Vault, they will kind of expect to say, oh, they could have a Sudden Chill, I could be discarding 2 cards this turn. But oftentimes, if you just like sing it when it's least expected, it can put the opponent in like a really, really tough spot. So I'm pretty high in the Sudden Chills at the moment. But besides that, I think the deck is just still doing what the deck has been doing the entire set. And yeah, I don't know how many Johns I'm going to actually end up sitting on a lot of the time. For me, like the uninkability of John is actually a big problem in this deck. Like, but believe it or not, because like you really, really, really want to make sure you get to 5. And I think the more consistently you can just go, more consistently you can make sure that you are inking every single turn, and then you get to 5, the deck performs super, super well. But if you have a turn when you miss an ink on turn 3 or turn 4 or whatever, it can be detrimental to the deck, honestly. So like that's the thing to kind of keep an eye out for. And I think a few things that have changed as well is some of the removal options. I think if you're adding Prince Johns into the deck, then we don't talk about Bruno, it gets a lot better, obviously. If there's already a Prince John on the board. I think a few people are kind of cutting down on Zeus's, which I don't know. If you want to play Zeus, I think you can play Zeus. I think it can be a great tool to, opponent plays Tinkerbell or something like that, and then you remove it. It's not too bad. Like I always liked one Zeus. But yeah, there's not too many options to consider, honestly, besides this Prince John. I have been looking at like the Pegasus stuff a little bit, but I don't think I'm going to end up going down that line, because I think if you want to play the 5-drop Pegasus, you probably want to play the 1-drop Pegasus as well, and I just don't think it's great in this meta at the moment. The current list I have as well to fit in the Prince Johns and stuff is actually cut down on one drop Robin Hood. So I have 3 1-drop Robin Hoods, which I don't miss them that much, honestly. But the thing to note is that it's the 1-1-drop in this deck that does actually contest Flynn Rider for RA. The Diablo, and if you're playing 1-drop Flynns, don't really do much unless you have Hidden Cove. So that's not like the reason, I'm playing my 1-drop Robin Hood because I'm going to stop your Flynn Rider, because oftentimes in the RA matchup, they probably just ink the Flynn. But it is something to note and something to consider. So I'll see how I do. Who knows? I don't, to be honest, like to answer your question, I don't think that the conversion rate is going to suffer drastically. Like I think people will expect the deck, but I still think that the deck will perform pretty well. But I guess we'll see, right?
Yeah. Well, we look towards Bologna. When what weekend is that exactly?
This weekend.
This weekend. Jeez. We're
traveling.
Yeah,
traveling on Friday.
I'm not asking for no reason to play every day.
Bro, you stop asking me in the middle of the workday. I wake up, it's 7 a.m. I haven't even brushed my teeth yet. And he's like, any gamers today?
No, Brendan, it's even earlier for you because I wake up and he messages in the group chat. Brendan's fucking snoozing at that time, man.
Yeah. Or pretend snoozing.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, yeah, excited to see, and I hope that you guys will get your day twos, and I think it does. You know, I am smelling that. I'm smelling it might be Moyne's tournament.
I'm smelling Moyne as well. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah,
the smelly Moyne tournament here.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, if you enjoy this podcast, then what you can do is leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. By the way, guys, I did give out a bunch of T-shirts at DFW. I give out like 5 or 6.
Oh, hell yeah.
7. I actually gave out Moyne's t-shirts, so no more t-shirts. No, I'm kidding. I think I still have one for you.
Did you give them out to people who actually knew us though, and not just or was it like, here's a free t-shirt, watch the podcast?
Yeah. No. I definitely give them out to people who knew us. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, if you enjoy this podcast, review Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps so much. Video version of this at YouTube at youtube.com/@Podcana podcast. Spoilers are a bit different this season. Moyne and Kyle are going to be doing the entire set, and then we're going to be hitting the bangers next week on the podcast. So stay tuned for that and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you want to see. So at Podcana Podcast, Twitter's at Brendan APG, at Kawatech_CG, and at Moyne_HS. Go follow Moyne if you want lists. He posts all of his lists all the time. And check out the Podcana Discord. There's going to be a link in the description. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll see you next week.